Russian dictator Putin once again spat in the face on the entire world and once again demonstrated his desire to prolong the war, Russian-Ukrainian war, and not only Russian-Ukrainian. Marco Rubio has reappeared on the negotiation stage. Who needs to see this negotiation spectacle through to the end and why? We will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News and another YouTube channels. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us. And Substack, Yuri Rashkin, yes?
Absolutely. Irina, it's of course always a pleasure to see you. And then I appreciate the opportunity that we speak and chat so often. But today I feel is a historic day because I think Europe has really shown that it has awakened. And I think that is just remarkable. And I think everything we're seeing, such as Putin's freak out, is connected to this.
You are quite right, because 1 hour ago, before our interview, I had a conversation with Igor Eidman, a psychologist and political strategist from Berlin, from Germany. And Igor Eidman, he is also one of brothers of Boris Nemtsov, who was killed by Vladimir Putin because he was a strong leader of Russian opposition wave on 2014, Putin killed him. And Igor Eidman has lived in Germany for years from annexion of Crimea by Putin. And Eidman told me, he even has passport of Germany. Eidman told me that nobody is afraid of Putin's blackmails, Oreshnik, Putin's statements about war against Europe. Europe is strong, really. They found money for us, yes, $90 billion. And European leaders, European citizens, they are not afraid anymore, Yuri, at all.
I think that Igor is a wonderful person in many ways and a great specialist. I do feel that he's being somewhat overly optimistic here, because I think that what Putin has shown is that he is a threat. And I think we see this verified by the fact that Europe is not using Russian money. They're just not daring, on one hand, to go that far, to make that extra step, to show, as Igor and some others have, pointed out, that he is scared. I mean, he failed. Yes, he failed. Europe is not scared, but Europe could be less not scared, more not scared, if they took Russian money, because it would really help and would be not just poetic justice, but financially smart if Ukraine was getting support of $105 billion or 90 billion euros if they were paid by Russia. That's what should have been happening, because who started the war? Russia. So who should be paying for this? Russia. But I think Europe is a little intimidated by Russia. And so that's why they're investing in Ukraine, because that's their security guarantee against Russia. And so I think on one hand, yes, they're a little bit afraid, but on the other hand, what they have done is actually kind of stronger, because it's one thing to say, you know what, I don't think that this neighbor is going to be back to claim his stuff. He is in jail for a long time. I think we can take his stuff. And he is like in jail going, you just try. I'm going to come on, I'm going to get you. And we're like, well, but on the other hand, we really want to pay for Ukraine. We got to pay for Ukraine. That's not I guess we're going to pay out of our own money. And, and I think that our own money is a really big statement. This is effectively makes Ukraine part of kind of European Union, because now European Union is going to spend $90 billion. Of course, if Putin were to be, if he really wanted to, I don't know, save some money for everybody, he would stop the war, because then not so much money would need to be used. But on the other hand, after 2 years of this and war, let's say, continuing, just imagining such a possibility, I think it really increases the chances in 2 years of Russian money being tapped at that point, even more likely than Europe saying, you know what, we're going to do this again. So that means that Putin has effectively signed himself up for 2 more years of war, possibly 4 4 more years of war? 4 more years. Does he want this? I don't think he wants this. I think this is why his freak out at the press conference was such a freak out, because like, what are you, he can brandish all sorts of, throw blood around and talk about this city and that city and lie about everything. God knows, in America, that's fine when president does that. But it does not have the same effect, because I think for all the people who were saying, well, when will Europe wake up? I started saying, how will we know that Europe has awakened? And the answer that I have found is that, to me, when Europe, gives money to Ukraine, that shows that this is where, as Biden said, don't tell me what's important to you, show me your budget. This is putting, I have experience in local, dozen years in American local government as county supervisor, as city council, and I agree with the idea that you can say all sorts of nice things when people come to you, but then are you going to put it in a budget? And I think this is where Europe is saying goodbye to America. And this is why America is getting, I feel like even the conversation about how much United States is going to be committed now to continuing to share intelligence as part of the new defense budget, it highlights to what extent we're getting pushed out of the leadership position in this world. When Europe is now financing its own security, then who needs the United States?
But Yuri, for one detail, we see that Europe froze Russian money for ages, so they will use, I think, them not in the nearest future, but maybe potentially in future for a few months or years. But really,
I think the more money they sink into the project called Ukraine, the more they will want to see Ukraine succeed, and the more they will look for other means to sustain this project that they've got involved themselves in. I mean, that's how people operate. And I think that this just it increases the likelihood, absolutely, of Russian money being used the way it should have been from the beginning.
And it's also the path to Europe to feel themselves in different peace circumstances and with feelings of security guarantees given to us, because money for us is a safe future for them, for all European countries, because we defend all European continent from Russian aggressions for last 12 years. And Europe really awake, maybe not so quick as we wanted, but now we see such picture, and I think that this picture will be greater and in bigger scales. But maybe Europe are in one board with United States, because today a correspondent of CNN, Barak Ravid, informed us, and then this information confirmed our state of Security of National Defense, Rustem Umerov, that both Europe and Ukraine with United States will have negotiations on one table in Miami, Florida. So we see that Putin wanted to see Europe and Ukraine in the menu, but no, we are direct persons in this negotiation process, European leaders, American and Ukrainian leaders on one table. Maybe does it mean that our interests and European interests are important for United States of America, for Donald Trump, for maybe for Marco Rubio? We see him again today.
I think the only correction is I think Barak Ravi, I think he's for Axios, but I'm not even 100% sure. There's somebody with that similar name doing work for Axios, but I think that what we're seeing here, what I'm seeing anyway, is there's a kind of a two layers in United States foreign policy. And
Yuri, sorry, he is a global affairs correspondent for Axios and CNN analyst, so he works for both the same person, okay, but for two media.
Okay, yes. Nice job.
So I'm correct, you too.
Well, we both are correct. This is great.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, but you see, we've noticed that Russia seems to have a disconnect between let's get this 28-point agreement done to no, we're going to fight until all Ukraine is ours, surrender now. And there's a disconnect there. And at the same time, we see a disconnect in the United States between the Trump that says everything's going to be Putin. Putin is winning. Russia is there. The longer Ukraine fights, the more Russia is going to take. But at the same time, Russia is going to lose people. Oh well, but Russia, Russia, Russia. But there's also this group of people such as Witkoff and Kushner who are seeing the financial opportunities of trying to make some kind of a deal work. So having all of this kind of different set of interests shows that there's no united front really on either side. And in that setting, it seems like it makes sense to have negotiation process where Ukrainians can flush out what it is that they're willing to accept. The same way that United States needs to flush out what it is that we're willing to guarantee. And even though nobody trusts Donald Trump, I think that is part of the reason that guarantees need to be so sacrosanct, and indestructible, easily triggerable, and all sorts of things, because we're dealing with Donald Trump, where in the defense budget they have to put a thing saying that Donald Trump can't stop sharing intelligence with Ukraine. Because, I mean, we know who we're working with. This is in 2017. There was a CAA TSA law that said that president cannot do what he's doing now with Ukraine. So it was obvious then. It's obvious now. But I think that there is a desire between some people to hammer out an agreement. And I think it will be useful both in the future, because there is now a historical record, more or less, of what Ukraine's willing to accept, what the United States is willing to guarantee. And in the end, it's going to be, I guess, Putin who is going to be stuck in the position of saying no to Trump. Mm-hmm. And, no, people don't like saying no to Trump. And so this is why we see all this kind of a back and forth of, is this Ukraine's fault? Is this Russia's fault? And trying to juggle for who King Trump is going to blame. That's looking a little ridiculous and petty, except that we're talking about a war in lots of people's lives. But that's the high school drama that we're observing at the moment.
Marco Rubio, State Secretary of the United States, reappeared in negotiation process, because we noticed with my another regular guest, Taras Zagorodny, political strategist, that Rubio was absent for last weeks in this case, Russian-Ukrainian negotiating process. But now Rubio appeared and stated that agreement requires two things. Both sides have to get something, and both sides have to give something. We are trying to figure out what Russia can give and what it expects to get, and what Ukraine can give and what it expects to get. Ultimately, the decision will be up to Ukraine and Russia. And it's really correct, because we don't have war with the United States, or Europe doesn't have war with the United States. So really, we have two sides of this war, Ukraine and Russia, aggressor and terroristic state. It will not be up to the United States, or also added Rubio. That is the role we are trying to play in this process, and that is why you see so many meetings. It is not about imposing a deal at anyone, really. Maybe sometimes, yes. It's about identifying what both sides expect and need, and what both sides are willing to give, so that those two things can intersect. What does it mean that Rubio are again in this process? Really, we understand that we can make a lot of agreements with United States, but the main aggressor and side of this conflict is Russian Federation. And as you mentioned, as we analyzed, the Russian Federation and Putin, they doesn't want peace at all. Not now, not today, not tomorrow.
I think that Marco Rubio understands that. But I think
and only
that
Marco Rubio.
Right. But I think that that's not about whether he wants peace or not. I think that Marco Rubio can probably provide some operational details, because he understands and knows State Department and government things maybe better. Because, I mean, we're dealing with Kushner and Witkoff, who are just friends and relatives, close relative of the president, who are representing representing Trump's interests. And I don't think that Trump is the only party to this agreement also. So this is where understanding what American guarantees of safety and security are provided. Now, I got to say that the whole conversation about American guarantees seems really kind of strange considering our president. Because we ourselves can't get security guarantees from our president. And, you know, the Kennedy Center can't get a security guarantee because yesterday they voted to rename it Trump Kennedy Center. And now today they're putting up the already letters. So, I mean, this is what security guarantees can we get? Main security guarantee of Ukraine, of course, is the Ukrainian army.
Our forces, yes. But selling weapon and intelligence moments and details, it's like a part of security guarantees. I understand that American boots will not be on our ground, but...
Yeah, I think more of these conversations and things like the new strategy, the national security strategy document that Putin was even referring to, the more those documents are seen in public, the more people see what this administration really is interested in doing, even though everybody knows that for Trump, this is just a first negotiation step. This national security strategy, and is just a starting point for negotiations. But it still sends a really terrifying message to Europe, and I suspect that part of the reason that European leaders decided to go for this tremendous loan to Ukraine is because they saw the national security strategy, and they went, whoa. If that's how it's going to be, then we just got to, then there's no guarantee from the United States. We're not even part of their concern kind of a circle. If Russia is not an issue, according to Putin, that's exactly, they worked hard to get that into the document, I'm sure, to get themselves out of it. But imagine national security of the United States that does not involve Russia as a problem.
Yes,
what?
It was the first time, really, that Russian is not a big problem and such challenge for United States, and we didn't understand why.
I think if you're a European leader at that point, you're seriously thinking like, whoa, I think we need to give money to Ukraine because clearly Putin just threatens more. That's so dumb because he's trying to show that I have not begun to fight, that you should surrender to me now. But in essence, it looks like he's just running around and just throwing his feces around. Because Europe is investing in Ukraine because Europe understands that the security of its guarantee with security and safety is Ukraine, not the United States. It's Ukraine because once Putin is done with Ukraine, he's clearly moving on to others, and he's already trying to intimidate people. So, this is if nursing staff shows up, does it mean that the patient will behave differently? No, but now there's nursing staff in the room, and that's very, very important, and their salaries are paid for the next 2 years. So let's say thank you to the nurses and the doctors who are taking care of those Russian viruses, because that's just the president and the cards Europe has been dealt with. Ukraine is its security guarantee, and I think that has become clear over the last year, and that's really where the Trump strategy has backfired so grandiosely, because the idea was make Europe drop Ukraine and run to Papa Donald, because Donald is going to protect you against a big bad Putin who already got Ukraine, and he's looking like he may want to try more. Well, let's maybe give him some Baltic countries, and then maybe he'll and Europe decided not to go that route. Europe decided that no, thank you. I think it's a really important step, and had it not been for Putin, had it not been for Trump, Europe would have never given this money to Ukraine. So it's a kind of a but yet, of course, without Ukrainian army, which creates the space for Ukrainian diplomacy, none of this would be possible either. So this is another example of Ukrainian identity that's been shaped by this war, as I see, where people understand more and more that they're not Russian, that Russia is a different thing and Ukraine is a different thing. And this would have never happened if the two countries lived at peace. So go figure.
Yes, and we see that we even can strike Russian tankers in Mediterranean Sea, in Caspian Sea, in Black Sea. No safe place for Russian.
Those are Ukrainian sanctions, I understand.
Yes, the best Ukrainian sanctions against Russian fleet with tankers who help Russia transport his oil, his black cruel oil.
Yeah, this is a on one hand, it's troubling because, of course, these attacks on international, vessels and international waters. It's whatever, you can make all sorts of arguments about how this is inappropriate. But then, hello, look at President of the United States. We are now seizing tankers off of coast of Venezuela. So who are we? Once again, we lose any leverage because when we do the same thing we tell other people not to do. This doesn't really affect, we're at least we're not saying anything about tankers and the shadow fleet. But at least I guess Putin should understand that we're not, this is the new world. Pirates of 21st century. But in Ukraine's case, they have to do what they have to do, and I think that this could be an important signal, because if these tankers are too expensive to insure, if they bring more troubles than they're worth, then that's how you affect the regime. Because I think that what a lot of people are hoping for and fail to understand is that even though the regime is cracking all the time, it's not going to, if we do one more thing and the regime will suddenly collapse. It's about having an infrastructure of resistance to authoritarian governments, such as like Voice of America and the public broadcasting systems that were broadcasting international, voice of reason onto Russia and to Soviet Union. That was done for decades by Western governments as a way of long-term strategic resistance to this threat. And that's where I think long term is what 2 years is, but it needs to be even longer than that, because Europe, hopefully, with its understanding of $90 billion, 90 billion euros invested in Europe, that this is a long-term project, and they need to think about Russian threat long-term, including things how they're going to build infrastructure to deal with Russian sabotage. Because when Associated Press publishes a story listing almost 200 cases of Russian sabotage, this is real. This is a real danger, and I think Europe needs to think about this not as a let's do one more sanction and then the regime will say, "Oops, okay, we're done now. I don't know this." Now that day, you finally found our weak spot, the shadow fleet. But even though all of this is trying to empty out Putin's wallet, war is still a political decision, and nobody's rivaling him for power in Russia. And that means that West needs to be prepared for a long battle. The new Cold War is here.
So, Yuri, if the peace talks at this weekend don't end well now, will there be sanctions from the USA against Kremlin next week, as Scott Bessent has said? Or no? Or will we see such pressure? Because I can't believe to Scott Bessent.
Hey, I was just trying to drink some coffee. No, it's fine. I think what's is ridiculous about the situation is that our president already has all the tools. He already has the sanctions because they was passed. He has the authority that was given to him by the last guy. Not going to name his name, Biden. But he already gave him the authority to put those sanctions in. He doesn't need anything. But we see that when Trump is upset, he remembers that he has that authority when he's upset at Putin, and then Putin calls him, and then Trump's like, "Oh, gee, what can I do? We need your sanctions." And so now that you have these senators who are pretending to be respectable human beings, even though one of them is Lindsey Graham, who are saying that they're going to, say, new sanctions. Oh, the terrifying new sanctions. President already has the gun. He just needs to fire it. It's not like we're going to go and buy a gun. We already have everything.
But I believe that the United States will attack Russia by a new wave of sanctions because of Nobel Prize and laureates till January, and because of election and Trump's rating, 37% of supporting, or how much now?
From the Nobel Peace Prize perspective, I mean, those are valid reasons. I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump. We know his obsession with the Nobel Peace Prize because Obama got it. And so he has to do something to beat him, in every possible way. All right. But the relationship with Putin, multi-year relationship with multi-decade relationship with Putin versus Nobel Peace Prize and sticking it to Obama or Putin. I think he's going to choose Putin. And then when it comes to elections and his sagging popularity, then I think he really needs Russia at that point, because where's he going to run away to? Cuba? No, he needs to go to Rostov. That's where all the dictators gather, I understand, because it's been kicked out of their, wishful thinking. So I think that his sagging popularity and Nobel Peace Prize, that I don't know how he thinks he can qualify for Nobel. It's just in his mind, it's just crazy. I think that he's going to choose Putin every time.
It's a pity. It's wrong, really.
It is. It's wrong, and it's a pity.
But we have what we have. Will you have a war between United States and Venezuela, or it's only about? We don't understand really why Trump is so weak here too, or maybe he is waiting for something.
Well, he's waiting for the taco to go bad. No, he's
Be serious.
look, right. I mean, trying to kind of connect the reality with the metaphors here. What we see is that he's looking at the whole drug thing. It sounds like a cover out, like a fake excuse. Realistically, it sounds like this is about oil reserves and about change of regime and being able to tap into those oil reserves, which are specific heavy kind of oil that our oil refineries are set up to run. And there's only three places for that oil, and that's Canada, Russia, and Venezuela. Russia we don't deal with right now except for caviar. And Canada, we got to show them that they should have joined United States. So let's take oil from Venezuela instead. Mm-hmm. So I think in a way, Venezuela seems more like a kick at Canada, which is not happy about it. But Venezuela is not interested in changing its politics simply because Donald Trump doesn't like Canada. So I think that these attempts at trying to starve the Maduro regime, and, I think, well, if Trump doesn't understand, but Putin understands that you don't change regimes by putting people through hardships. That's not how you defeat dictatorships. Those people live under hardships. So I think that this is a really bad strategy that's going nowhere. And Trump is just hoping that he can choke off the Venezuela and have them run away versus starting a war. Because once again, he's up for violence, but he is not interested in a long-term war, especially since, it's hard. It would be hard to blame it on Biden. He will still say this was Biden's fault. Biden made me do it. But if only Donald Trump would have been president, this war would have never happened. Which one? Anyone. It's crazy, but I think it's the safer money is that he's not going to do anything. He's not going to invade Venezuela. And also what we saw from the article in big interview of his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, is that beyond a certain level, even they seem to think that they would need congressional approval, which is a wonderful backstop that they still, if they feel like they need it, that's great. So this is going to be just a scandal and a catastrophe that delegitimizes our a lot of different things, and hopefully no worse than that. But there's been already nearly 100 people killed, and we don't know why. We just have an explanation from President, who just gave a speech where in 18 minutes of Fast and Furious, I don't think there was one fact mentioned. So he lives in his own bubble, and what is it going to pierce? What is it going to pierce that bubble? Russian defeat. So that's where support of Ukraine is so crucial.
A new part of Epstein files, will it be threatening for Trump?
Well, it is clearly threatening for Trump because he closed the House of Representatives or had his speaker close House of Representatives for, weeks and weeks. And what we see now is that this administration is demonstrating today. It's an important moment, the same way that we have an absolutely historical meeting today. That I'm glad that you and I can kind of share this with our listeners and viewers about 90 billion euros because it's a historic moment. We also see that in a kind of historic moment, this administration fails. It violated the law that it signed itself a month ago. It signed the law that said that it will release all the information, and it already says today it will not be able to release all the information. Thank you freaking very much. Any other questions about this administration's ability to follow even its own laws? Very questionable, very limited, and I don't know how this can be security guarantees from this kind of administration or this kind of government, frankly. But what we're seeing, interestingly, there are a lot of people who were caught up in this Epstein saga. There's David Brooks, there's Sergey Brin, who are sitting there in pictures looking like they're on the cover of, like it's part of Vanity Fair. They're hanging out, good times. We don't know, what happened afterwards. Maybe they left and then terrible things happened. But, that life in New York, it's clearly very dangerous. You never know when you will befriend a pedophile financier who is, collecting a crowd of interesting people around him and seems to be the life of the party. And then, boom, it blows up like this. Just live in Wisconsin, chill out, don't have those kinds of interactions. No kinds of problems like that. I don't know why people live in New York after that.
Yuri, thank you very much for this conversation, for your time, your thoughts, mood that you can create for us every week. Thank you for all our interviews in different languages and YouTube channels. See you later this week also. Take care, please.
Take care as well. Thank you.
Let's see every time. Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News, and my name is Rena Uzlova. Guys, thank you for joining, watching us, subscribing to our YouTube channels. Wish you good day, good luck, and take care.